Today, we're diving into two totally rival theories about power, freedom, and government, ideas that have, no joke, shaped the world we all live in. We're going to be looking at the social contract, specifically through the eyes of two philosophical heavyweights, Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. All right, so let's jump right in with a thought experiment. It's something that absolutely fascinated both of these guys. Just picture it. What if there were no rules, no laws, no government, no society at all? What would that even look like? Well, this hypothetical world has a name. It's called the state of nature. And believe me, how you imagine this world, it changes everything. It's kind of like the starting line for both Hobbes and Rousseau. But man, they sprint off in completely opposite directions. So you can see right here, we've got two wildly different visions of what that world would be. And what's so fascinating is that both Hobbes and Rousseau, they actually start from the same place, this idea that all men are created equal. But wow, their conclusions could not be more different. For Hobbes, who lived through the absolute chaos of the English Civil War, this state of nature was just a constant war of all against all. But for Rousseau, who was writing a bit later during the Enlightenment, it was this peaceful, almost innocent kind of existence. So for Hobbes, this isn't some world of awesome freedom. No way. It's a world of constant, crippling fear. I mean, he saw his own country get torn apart by civil war, so it makes sense he'd argue that in the state of nature, everyone is a potential threat to everyone else. You're just living in the state of utter distrust, where working together long-term is pretty much impossible. The only thing that matters? Survival. Rousseau, on the other hand, saw things completely differently. You got to remember, he was a thinker of the Enlightenment, and he was really critical of the super unequal society he saw all around him. He was like, wait a minute, conflict isn't natural at all. He argued that the whole mess began with one single corrupting invention, private property. Seriously, he said the first person to fence off a piece of land and say, this is mine, that person was the true founder of civil society and all the inequality and fighting that came with it. Okay, so if you're Hobbes and you're faced with this chaotic, terrifying state of nature, what do? Well, he proposed a pretty radical solution. How do you get out of a world that is just unbearably brutal? You know, at its core, Hobbes's argument is all about priorities. He believed that for any rational person, survival just trumps everything else, period. So to escape that constant fear of dying, people would willingly, heck, even logically, trade their natural freedom for the promise of safety and order under a super powerful ruler. And that right there, that's the heart of Hobbes's social contract. You basically hand over all your liberty to an absolute power. He calls it the sovereign. And what do you get in return? The sovereign keeps the peace. It's the fear of the sovereign's punishment that keeps everyone else in line and stops society from sliding right back into that nasty, brutish state of nature. All right, now let's switch gears and go back to Rousseau. He looked at Hobbes's solution and thought, whoa, that's not salvation, that's a trap. For Rousseau, giving up your freedom was literally giving up your humanity. This famous quote really gets to the heart of Rousseau's whole deal. He basically believed people had been tricked. He said they all ran to chain themselves in the belief that they secured their liberty. So for Rousseau, the real problem wasn't escaping nature. It was escaping the corrupt society that had slapped these chains on humanity in the first place. So Rousseau's social contract is, radically different. Instead of handing over your rights to some king, you give them to the entire community. This creates what he calls the general will, which is just the collective will of all the people, always aimed at the common good. And the logic is pretty cool, actually. Since you're part of that community, when you obey a law made by the general will, you're really just obeying a law you helped create. You're obeying yourself. And this is a direct shot at Hobbes. Rousseau is basically saying that a government built on fear and force isn't legitimate. It just isn't, even if it brings peace. He might call that a joyless tranquility, but it's not real freedom. For Rousseau, real, legitimate power has to come from the consent of the people being governed, not from the threat of a sword. So what we've got here are two completely different blueprints for how to build a society. And they both come from that exact same starting question, what about a world without rules? One goes for a top-down, absolute authority, and the other goes for a bottoms-up, collective approach. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? For Hobbes, it's simple. Human nature is selfish, the problem is chaos, and the solution is a powerful sovereign. For Rousseau, human nature is good, the problem is a corrupt society, and the solution is the general will. But, and this is a big but, look at that bottom row, the major risk. See, each system kind of contains the seeds of its own special brand of tyranny. And that is a super important point to get. And this is where we see the fundamental flaw in both systems, right? They each have a potential dark side. In Hobbes's world, you could be stuck at the mercy of an all-powerful tyrant with no checks and balances. But in Rousseau's world, critics worry that this general will could just become a tyranny of the majority, crushing anyone who disagrees and forcing everyone to conform for the so-called common good. Look, this whole centuries-old debate, it's not just some dusty academic exercise. Not at all. It gets right to the very heart of the political and social questions that we are dealing with every single day, like right now. Think about it. This is the fundamental trade-off that Hobbes and Rousseau are forcing us to confront. Every single time we debate things like national security, or those annoying airport screenings, or public health mandates, we are wrestling with the ghost of Hobbes. How much of our individual freedom are we really willing to give up for collective security? And on the flip side, this is the central challenge of Rousseau's general will. We see it playing out in debates about online content moderation, right? Where big tech companies struggle to define a community standard. Or even in local zoning laws, where what the majority wants can totally clash with the rights of a few people. So the question becomes, does the majority always know what's best for everyone? So which social contract are you living under today? Just take a look around. In the laws that protect you, and yeah, in the ones that restrict you, you're going to see echoes of both of these guys. This whole debate between absolute security on one hand and collective freedom on the other, it's not over, not by a long shot. It's happening every single day, in our governments, in our towns, in our communities. So the real question is, where do you draw the line?